All right, good evening, everybody. As always, welcome in. We're going to wait a little bit, maybe a minute or two, to get some people on here, see who else wants to join us. A lovely Thursday evening. Hope everybody is having a great spring. For those that are in the north, south, I know it's getting warm, but we like it up north. All right, we'll wait a tiny bit more here. Welcome in everybody else. All right, we'll get started on this topic here. Welcome in, everybody. Thank you for joining. My name is Dustin Arnold, Northeast Area Manager. I'm going to go over a hot topic with some people and some players, kind of when to move your players up and down. I know a lot of directors have some differences and different things that they do or look at and things like that. So just wanted to kind of bring things together for everybody, show you a few different places that you can look up, some resources, things of that nature. So we'll jump right in here. First and foremost, though, as we all like to do, a little quote on the bottom: trust yourself. You know more than you think you do. That's a big thing for myself, with some self-doubt whether or not I should do certain things or not. But when you move players up and down, a lot of times it just trust what your gut is telling you, and normally you're going to be in the right direction. So we'll get started here. Just a couple things we want to go over. We've got some of the director resources that we have available to everybody, which include your bag tracker data. I know Dave does a lot of work getting that for us, so that is a great resource, one of the best resources that you can look at weekly, to keep track of your players and just players around your area, to see how they're doing, whether or not they should need to be moved up or not. Another big one, just look at your own event results. That's a big one that a lot of people kind of forget, to go back and look at just your own past events for certain players that you're thinking of, whether or not they've done good in past ones and starting to drop off, or if they're going the opposite, they are improving quite well. So, and then also the big one that I know a lot of directors get, a lot of players like to do, is always that, how do we deal with the complaints about everybody having a good game, an intermediate thrower throwing a 10 or a 9, things like that in a game, and getting somebody that's a little bit upset. So just want to kind of go over those, give you some of the slides to show you some of those resources, and even just some personal experiences that I've had dealing with some of this stuff as well. And again, just kind of similar spots. The biggest one, bag tracker data and your own results. The other one is the director Facebook group and or chat. I know the state directors, we have our own chat, but all directors have the Facebook group that we are in. I know at times it seems there's some random questions. There's some good questions. That is a great resource, though, to find other directors that may be in the same boat as you. Maybe they don't, not sure exactly how or when they should move that player up. And again, you may have somebody right in, the next regional director over you can talk to, or another one across the state that you don't necessarily talk to, that they may be able to pop into that group chat or on the Facebook group on a comment. So that's another awesome resource to get into. And then the other one is listening to players, not necessarily their complaints, but ask them, just talk to them, things like that. So we'll go over that on another slide. The big one, like I said, one of the most important ones that you can look at weekly, that Dave does do this for us, usually on Mondays, is the bag tracker data. I put the link in here, but as far as where you can get it, it is also right in your admin section under director resources on the front page. You can click on that, and the best resources are along the bottom. I know some people only look at that first tab to see, who the ACL is going to be moving up based off of past or recent finishes, things of that nature. That one is one that, you're going to C, you're going to automatically see that they're going to do that. I myself taken upon, after a regional weekend or a big tournament weekend, states, things like that, looking at this and seeing if my mind, again, your gut is telling you, if my mind is correct, this player just placed, top two or won both events at a big event, and they've been playing good lately. They're probably going to be on this list. If they are, your judgment is correct, and they should be moved up anyway. I'll go ahead and move them up before the ACL does throughout the week. Let them know, hey, you did a great job. The ACL was going to move you up, but I'm going to do it for you. Congratulations on moving up to intermediate or competitive or advanced, either one that it goes up to. But again, a huge resource, let alone that first tab. But you can see on here along the bottom, you've got a lot of other ones when the other people that were moved up, PPR by the year. Their PPR the last 2 months, so it's going to give you an indication of somebody that might be a lower rank or lower division that is throwing a higher PPR over the last couple of months. And again, that's another resource in this sheet to go on, and it may not be one that the ACL is going to move them up automatically, but it does show you, okay, so-and-so is throwing an 8.2 over the last couple of months. Their PPR may be on their record or on their player app may say a 7.4, but they're throwing an 8.2 over the last couple of months. That means they're on their way up, and eventually they're probably going to be somewhere close to getting moved up. And again, that's a region-to-region basis at times. I mean, sometimes it is a national thing, but sometimes you get somebody that wins 3 or 4 regionals in a row, shooting a 7.6, but they're a competitive thrower, and they're going to get moved up by just a basis off of how many players or how many events that they won. Things like that. But again, if you haven't looked at this in detail too much, highly recommend. Again, every Monday usually gets updated. So maybe Monday afternoon, Tuesday to hop on, take a look. It is a fantastic resource that Dave does all these stats for everybody and puts it out there in a format that we all can see every single week. So it's truly probably one of the best tools that you can use. Another one, again, your own tournament results. The player stats are a big one. A lot of people look at the just the player stats alone. So these are just some of my local events that I have weekly. A couple of my players that I have just for instance, one person can shoot a 4.5 in one game in a swap, and then they'll shoot a 10.2 against somebody else in another swap. I don't necessarily look at individual games too much on those, opposed to what they have overall for the evening, because throughout the week we do 4 to 6 local events a week. You can kind of get a better understanding whether or not you throw them into a tour, just kind of get all the points and stats and things of that nature to see where they're at for that period of time, or you just go in and look at them one by one. You can get an understanding of where they should be. And again, your own local players, you're going to know them. You're going to know their skill levels. Those ones really are ones that shouldn't be a very difficult conversation to have. They probably know as well that they should be moved up. That's a big one. A lot of people do understand, hey, I'm not where I should be, but I'm going to stay here. If they're your local players, you're going to have that conversation pretty easily, and they're going to be like, yeah, I know, let's go. Let's move me up. Other one is how many top finishes they have. That's a big one for us here in New York. We get a lot of people that not necessarily throwing the highest PPR to necessarily say they need to be up into, say, the advanced or from intermediate to competitive, but they're winning quite a lot of those events in their skill level. It's one that I do look at probably honestly more frequently than I do at stats, because it's based off of how well they're doing. If they're winning over everybody else but still shooting a 7.9 in competitive, that's great, but they could probably start moving up into that advanced or open level and seeing where they're going to be playing. I get a lot of players that do end up going up, keeping their level at first to see how they do, and realize I can shoot with these guys pretty well and end up shooting higher PPRs in that level anyway. So it's another great resource just to see where they're finishing, and then the consistency follows right into that. How well are they doing? Are they shooting an 8.2 over the course of a month? Again, an easy way to look at that is one on your individual events, or throw it into a tour, see how their finishes are, see if they're top, at that top point level for local events, or, things of that nature. brings it all into one big picture. So again, your own results are another one to sift through if you're going through everything and looking for a player. Is a great resource. The big one that a lot of people, you always get talked to. I know this is kind of small for some of you that might be on your phone or something to slide, but somebody's in intermediate and one game they end up shooting a 10. They come up to you and say they shot way too high. They needed to be moved up a long time ago. We've all heard it. If you haven't, just wait. You will. It's bound to happen, whether or not it's at a local event or a regional or a state. Even at some of the opens, we hear it as well with some of the levels. So, it's a lot to look at one time. And when somebody just throws one game, myself personally, my one big saying I have back to, say that the other player that came up and says, yes, they did throw a really good game. But again, that's one game. If they continue, then I will go with you and say, yes, they should be moved up. But basically on this bottom, the two here, I had a player in one of my regionals. This was actually a perfect example. Like I was just saying, that somebody did come up to me and say they shot too high for an intermediate, shot a 7.4, I think it says on there. But then another game was a 6.4. Another game after that was a 5.2. And then he ended out, I think on the entire day for the intermediate range was around that 6 points. I think it was like a 6.3, 6.4. So he was right on that cusp of not shooting the greatest, but had that one game against that one player that shot a 10. He shot a 9, actually, something in one of these other games too. So it's bound to happen. It will happen. The best thing you can do, stay calm. Your tendency is to get defensive. It may be one of your players that plays with you all the time and they just haven't been moved up yet. And you're a little bit more apprehensive to, move them up at some times, or you might get a little bit more defensive on your own players. There's other times they're players that have never played with you. And that's going to be one of the hardest ways to distinguish on these events and things like that, where you don't know where their level should be. Whether it's a brand new player that doesn't have any PPR stats underneath their level, one you maybe just signed them up for an event through the ACL that morning, or it's just a player that doesn't play in your events, but you can see their PPR is still in that intermediate or competitive level, and they're just playing good for that day. It's going to be a hard time for you to sift through it for your new director, veteran directors. I know, again, we've heard this time and time again, but we're going to have it. You just need to look through the day. Don't make any rash decisions, of course, off of one game. Let it roll throughout the day, see where they're at. And if they end up shooting way higher than they should have, or than their level is leaving them to be, then yeah, you have that discussion maybe before they leave, or you message them the next day, email, or if you have them on, social media, things like that said, you did shoot, an 8.2, but you're an intermediate. So we're going to be moving you up to competitive, because I looked back at some of your last events and you were still shooting in that high 7s, low 8s. And you've just been flying under the radar a little bit, but I think it's time for you to move up. So again, this is a conversation that you're going to have at times. It's bound to happen unless you're just playing for, a little bit of fun with some buddies or something like that at a local night. But any bigger events, us regional or state directors, you're going to have it, but stick to your gut and know what you're doing, and you'll be perfectly fine. Again, another kind of quote on the side that, trust your intuition, kind of goes along with that first quote. You don't need to explain or justify your feelings to anyone. Just trust your own inner guidance, because it knows best. If you think somebody needs to be moved up, probably I would guess 90% of the time you're in the right that they need to. You're just trying to say maybe they don't. And maybe you don't want to hurt their feelings. Maybe you don't want them to not come to an event because maybe you moved them up and they didn't like that, or something like that. You have to remember the first bullet right here. No matter the circumstance, you're in control of your players. If you think it's going to be more, detrimental to keep somebody down more than you're going to, make them unhappy by moving them up, again, it's that conversation you have to have with them. Would not recommend just pushing them up and not letting them know, because they'll sign up for their next event and wonder why. But again, I've had it happen before. in our area where we did move somebody up. He wanted to be moved back down. We allowed to move him back down, but that was actually worse off because we had a lot of players not come back to some of those other events because they knew he was back down into that level. So again, trust your gut. You know better than any of the players that are out there at times that, whether or not they should be up there as well. Use all the tools at your disposal. Go through it on after a regional or a state or even a local event. Look at it the next day and just go through it in 5-10 minutes and just make sure, even right at the event when you hit complete, just go and hit the stats real quick and just say, okay, this is an intermediate level. Where are all the stats? You're instantly going to know, those high throwers anyway. They're going to stand out like a sore thumb because they're going to be right there on the top. Their DPR is going to be up, plus 2.2 or something like that. So it's going to be an easy way to see it. But again, have that discussion with that player once you're done and say, hey, look, over the last 3-4 of our events and a regional, you won the regional at an intermediate level. You've been thrown a little bit higher than what you really probably should be in intermediate. We're going to move you up to competitive. And I really, in a positive light, let them know, hey, you're going to be just fine. It may be a little bit intimidating, but again, you're going to have a great time just moving up into one level. Don't let it intimidate you at all. And again, just as important to use the tools supplied when moving somebody up or somebody down as it is for moving people up. Again, probably 95% of the time you're going to be moving people up. Very seldom are you going to be able to, or thinking about moving people down. It does happen. People don't play for a while. They come back to an event and, hey, I haven't been thrown in a 6 months to a year. I haven't had any stats. I don't know where I'm at. I'd like to play down a little bit. I personally don't really like to move them down just for the one event. I have them throw where they should, and then I go based off of that event. It kind of stinks to say this, but sometimes you can't trust everybody that they have the best intentions. Maybe they just want to get moved down quickly and, breeze through an event real quickly or not. But I always say, hey, let's throw where you're at right now. Judge it afterwards, and if you really do need to be moved down, then we'll move you down, and then we can go from there. But again, those resources are just as good to look for moving people up and down both sides. So could be, again, a lot of topics and a lot of discussions you can have with some players, and that's just something that's going to bound to happen with all of us. One other thing that just comes to mind on this as well, though, too, is some of those other resources aren't necessarily just those groups, but I know a lot of regional directors in other states, even just here in New York where I am. We've got a lot of other local directors that reach out to each other, to myself, or whomever, bounce things off. Hey, I saw somebody played in your event. How did they do? They don't want to play down. Should they play down? It's really the network that you have as directors. It doesn't necessarily have to be always taken right onto a Facebook group or anything else. But you have us directors, we are the minority when it comes to players. We all know that, but we have access to the system to see everything, have all the stats, have all those, tools that we have for ourselves to look at. And, again, it's a big thing that you just need to trust yourself. If you're at all a little bit hesitant, reach out to somebody, just get some feedback. And I'm be willing to say that 9 times out of 10, your intuition and your gut was right, that you should move them up or down. So that's a big thing. Good question, Athena. I will answer that as well. Who in each state is able to move players down if they request it? That is going to be your state director or higher. So state or your area manager are going to be able to move the players down. Regional managers are able to move them up, but cannot move them down. So if you have somebody as a local director or as a regional director that you need to move down, please reach out to your state director, and they can do that. I would advise to have your reasoning why, and not just hey, I need to move this person down. Can you do that for me? As state director and area manager myself, I ask that. Why should I? What's going on? And just to make sure that it's, you're not having that scenario of, moving somebody down and making everybody else upset, and then they don't show up, so you have a much smaller event than what you're anticipating. It happens. It did happen to myself, like I said before. So that's why I've learned, ask why, make sure that they have the reasoning that's there, and not just, hey, we need another player in this category, but he's an advanced thrower, but I'm going to put him in competitive for today. That doesn't fly. So yeah, state directors can move up or down. Regional is only up. So good question. But that's all that I had for everybody. I don't know if anybody else has any other questions that I can answer on top of what I already went over. Again, lots of resources that you have at your disposal to look at anything that you need for answers, whether it be, again, Dave's sheet, the best sheet that's out there for us to look at as far as, where certain players or high-level players are playing. I'd advise everybody to look at that if you haven't, or if you do, maybe you haven't looked at it in a while. It's pretty interesting to see, where some of your own local players are, where, even yourself, if you're a player / director, where you stack up. So that's the best resource. And then again, your own events, when you're done going through them or done at them, it's, advised just to look at your own events to make sure you're running your own events great and where they need to be. So do you ever offer advice to a player who requests to be moved up? Yeah, I've kind of talked to somebody before. Some people just want to play up. I have actually a person in my own league that wants to just play up all the time. And I say, hey, listen, I'm never going to stop you from wanting to, to play up into, say, the advanced or an open level and being a competitive thrower. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to move your player level up to advanced. And sometimes I advise not to. And the reasoning why is a lot of times if you go to either state or open level events and you need to be placed into, your certain level events. So you have, blind draws are level based. And, at times other events may be level based on top of that. And also a PPR limit, like you may have to have a 7.5 or something like that to be into the advanced level. And you're shooting a 7.04, I would not advise to get moved up. You can play up all you want, and I advise that. It's just not necessarily the greatest thing that I've had experience with, because it can also just, kind of deter that player thinking that he's going to be playing great in that level and be fine, and then get obliterated and kind of feel bad about it afterwards. Michael, I went 0-4 in the last 2 director blind draws at Worlds. Will you move me down? Director blind draws. Sorry, Michael, you're going to stay where you're at. No, but again, that can happen. Not necessarily even the director blind draws that we can get in at Worlds, but players can do the same thing. Go 0-4 or 0-2 in one tournament and 0-2 in the other at a regional or things like that. Again, situational basis. Maybe that can happen. But again, it's a discussion that has to be had and not just an automatic, I'm going to move you down just because, you didn't do good or not. So that's a big one. Athena, if a player has 6.5 PPR and wants to move up so that they could play in the blind draw, how would you advise them? I myself personally would not move them up. Again, that's my own personal opinion. And again, that's more of a discussion that can be had at some other levels too. But a 6.5 PPR, again, if you're moving up to play, say, if they want to play in that advanced blind draw and they're an intermediate / competitive thrower and they just want to get to that level, to me, it's not advised to do. And why I think that is, you're going to also on a blind draw hurt those other players that potentially have worked their way up to have that PPR to get into that blind draw and have a fair chance, where somebody else may just want to just be moved up just to play in that level without having to been at that level all year long, or whatever they need to qualify for that event. Not saying it can't happen. Again, it's situational, but I do not advise to move players up just to get into one of those divisional blind draws, unless again you're looking at a 8.2, 8.3 thrower that's staying in competitive and going up to advanced. different story. But if you have that 6.5 and want to move up to, competitive or even the advanced level, I myself personally do not advise that we would want to do that. It would probably hinder more on the other players than it would just do any good for that single player. So, yeah, I think Michael and Athena, I think you guys are going to be stuck where you're at, unfortunately. So, Chris, will you move me down right before an open and back up after? Great question. If you have not had that question, you will also have that asked to you. No, that is not advised to do either. You will get asked. You'll get asked even at an open for those that might have been to them or helped work some. I know myself, I got asked that at two of the ones I did this year. Can I just get moved down to playing this one and you can move me back up tomorrow for singles? Yeah, that's not a great way to go around it either. Again, you're only hurting that player and the other players by doing so. And this is meant for, your level is meant for, progression and looking where you want to go, not just a free ride to just move wherever you wish. And I want to play here today. I want to play there tomorrow. It's, playing down is never going to be a great thing either. You're not helping yourself. Everybody always knows playing up possibly could be the best thing that you can do. But again, depending on your PPR levels, your DPR, your overall stats for the last couple of months, maybe we don't move you up, but you can play up unless you're at that blind draw, and we need to see where you're at. Kind of for blind draws at my regionals, I always monitor players' PPR. However, I do let them play up in BYOP and single. Absolutely. Yes, that's exactly what I mean. Unless you're doing a divisional blind draw or say if you wanted to do a divisional only singles or whatever. If you haven't specified, I always the same thing. Regionals, even state levels. I know in opens this year as well. Opens have been always the amateur rounders. But with singles allowing them to play up as well this year, I follow that same structure. I'm never going to stop anybody that wants to go up. I do advise them that if they're an intermediate thrower, I said this at my state tournament a couple weeks ago, my interstate, if you want to play up, I'm not going to stop you, but just know you're going up against pros, you're going up against high advanced throwers. And because your points are not going to be as high as what theirs are, you're probably going to be a lower seed. So you're have a very high potential of maybe going 0-2 or squeaking a win and going 1-2. I just don't want you to get discouraged. Not saying you shouldn't play there or that I don't want you to. I just want to let you know some of the expectations that you could be seeing. So, do you take advice from your regional directors for players you don't know? Absolutely. That's part of that network that we have. Some of the new players, just for instance, again, up here in New York, one of my closer regional directors I have to me is Gary Jeffries. He gets some newer players from time to time that, will come down to mine if we do them on opposite weekends. And I don't necessarily know who they are. I'll shoot a quick message over and, maybe they did really good or won my doubles in the morning. I'll shoot a quick message. Hey, he said, I look and see that he's your player. He's played with you. How does he throw? Where should he be? Is he a competitive thrower? Is he not? And usually they'll get right back and yeah, we probably should move him up or leave him where he's at and see where he does after the day. But absolutely, take as much advice from other directors for those people you don't know than anything. That's going to be your biggest resource. Again, that you can get sometimes on the fly that you need a quick answer as well for those players because that sheet is not updated only once a week. So, I've had that myself. There was a young kid that just came to one of my regionals this past month and won my competitive and then ended up winning both my interstate competitive doubles and singles. He already knew after the day, he goes, can you just move me up now? I don't want the ACL to do it. I said, I will do that in the morning because it was 11 o'clock at night. So I messaged him, just said, hey, just making sure I'm moving you up. And he was all excited for it. He's ready for that next chapter of moving up into the advanced bracket and playing against some of the better players. So some players are negative. Some players are going to see it as a positive. You just got to take it as is. And again, trust that you know what you're doing and your gut is going to guide you pretty darn well. How do you encourage a player who was moved up from competitive to advanced and is unhappy about the move because they feel as though they are a competitive player? That's one of those tough discussions. Again, like I said, you're going to have some that are going to be they're not all going to be sunshines and rainbows, as people like to say. You're going to have some of those ones where people are discouraged. Sometimes it happens where they're just going through a little bit of a slump. I can personally say that that's happened to some of my own players as well. But the best thing is getting out there. If you have some time at some of these events, I know a lot of these advanced throwers, regionals and bigger events, you're going to have some pros, you're going to have some big elite players as well. They're going to be there. One of the things I ask, some of the players that have this issue is just go up and ask. One of my local pros is Brady Foster. Brady loves to just go to new players and give some pointers and just, positive reinforcement that playing up is not always necessarily going to be, I'm going to win every one, go 4-1 on a day and get in the money. Moving up levels does take a little bit of time to get comfortable. And again, that time where you may need to move them back down may happen. But again, it's encouraging, to let somebody know, today was your first event, and maybe you went 1-2 in doubles and you went 0-2 in singles. And just don't be afraid to come back, give some positive encouragement. The other thing I've done myself personally, is if somebody's that discouraged that they don't really want to, I offer, at a regional, hey, come over, do at least one more for me. I'll give you free singles entry for the day. I want to make sure that you're comfortable. Come and talk to me beforehand. Again, positive reinforcement for that player is going to be one of the better things that you can do. I'm not telling everybody to go out there and just spend your own money and give away free entries all over the place. But it is something that is a tool that you have in your bag that you can bring some other players back and allow them to see that, maybe it was just the day. Maybe they had a little nick in their arm when they slept on that shoulder wrong that night before, and they were just not rolled off the bed on the wrong side and then just had a bad day. And the next time they come back, they go, 4-1, they get in, tie for fourth place or something. Singles, they go 3-2. So they have a much better day. That's just going to bring them back up again for it. So do you have a number of how many times you move a player up or down in a season? I know it's not out there as a, defined number. But again, my gut, what I would always go with is if they're needing to go up and down, or say you move them up once and within the next 3 to 4 months, they have slumped so bad that now their stats are going to be going way back down. Again, look at those stats over that little bit of time for them. And you may need to do that. And I'm not saying towards the end of the season, they're going to be back up to where you need to move them back into the advanced bracket. It can happen. Again, it's the discussion that you need to have. And again, it could be regional as well. So, somewhere up here in New York may be completely different than somewhere down in the Carolinas or out in Texas, Montana, who knows? Your player levels and player, amounts are going to be a little bit different to where they may drop down at the beginning of the season because they haven't played one. You move them up again in the middle, and then they realize that they didn't do great, and then they should probably maybe put back down. So again, it's trusting what you need to do, and looking at those players at when that situation may arise. So again, not necessarily a defined number on how many times or what you need to do, but again, just bounce that off of yourself. Look back at your events if they've played, and then bounce it off of the other directors. Sorry, my dog somebody's pulling into my driveway. Oh, my dog, here she goes. Hold on one second. All right, Chris had another one. If an advanced player, I had surgery, would you move me down during my recovery period even though I have a high PPR? Oof, very good situational option. Personally, I would not, unless it really dictated that they really should need to be, only because if they're just going through a small recovery, maybe only a couple of weeks, maybe a month, and then they're right back up there again, it's not necessarily the best case just to throw them down there because they can't throw. the highest PPR that they could before, say they were going through a shoulder surgery or maybe an arm or, hand, hurt your hand or something like that. Because normally, again, this is just my own thought, my own, opinion and stuff is normally those recovery periods, you're going to get better. You're going to go back to where you were, unless it's an issue where you had a firework incident, you lost a finger. I don't know. That one may be a little bit different. And, again, they may not be able to throw the same ever again. And, you'll have to work through that at that time. But another good one. Anybody got anything else? Hopefully I've answered a lot of your other questions or answered some before in the presentation as well. Again, it's a lot of times I keep repeating it, but it's situational that you'll have to just look at. But again, it's a great time to look at all the resources that you have available during the week. Say you have a big event coming up on the weekend, do a little bit of homework. Again, you don't have to sit on the computer for 2 hours studying every player and that everything that's going on. But, look back at some of your own, look at some of the ones that may be out there, look at the player detail on the website. I know I forgot to add that in there, but that's another good resource that you can go underneath for like standings and player detail right on the ACL website. You can see all of their past events, all their events they've had throughout the year, and just see their where they've stacked up. For everything. If they've won, all the local events that they need to make and they're maxed out now, well, that they're probably shooting pretty decent if they've won, most of them. So again, you can kind of gauge some things on there as well. So, all right. Well, if nobody has anything else, I want to thank everybody for joining me tonight. Hopefully everybody learned or can learn something off of this. But feel free to reach out to myself or any of your area managers if you guys have any questions on anything. I know for sure that we'd all be able to answer anything that you have and want to get you steered on the right path. So again, thank you guys very much. And I hope everybody has a great rest of your evening. Thank you.